am starting us right out of the gate. And some of you know me already. I'll just share. I'm Terrie Reeves, and I got to meet everybody at the Pink House because I participated in Dancing with the Stars. And I love to dance, but I fell in love with the Pink House and the people that run it, the volunteers that support that effort, and then you guys, the survivors. And I had a chance to do a session called Train for Life about 2.5 years ago. And I really got to understand the heart of the mission and vision and the passion that everyone has at the house to really create a safe space for people to share, to learn, to grow, to heal. And I said, I want to be part of that. So I'm now on the board and could not be happier. My consulting business is kind of what you're looking at. I'm not this real stuffy, I'm a corporate consultant type of person. I am, and I do a lot of work with individuals, teams, and organizations, just helping them architect change and making better decisions. But I really look at my work is not just trying to check a to-do list or to hit goals, but really to not just do a job, but trying to make a difference in the world. So my vision statement, and I know it's a bit lofty, but it is definitely worthy of pursuit. And you guys have probably already read it. I do want to and feel like I am, but I want to even contribute more in the form of being of service to this world, and how I can do that by impacting people's lives and encouraging self-study and what I call more intentional, mindful action. And we're going to do a lot of that tonight. We're going to really land in that space tonight. The roadmap to self-care, sometimes people say, well, you should sleep more, or you should exercise more, or you should eat healthier. And they just say these arbitrary things, or you might think them in your own mind. But then how do I architect to actually change my behavior and to make space for a new habit and to make time and to make myself a valued commodity? And so how do I get there? So if we look at the three things that we're going to be discussing tonight. One is the importance of self-care, and we're going to connect that back to well-being. The second is identifying where your life's out of balance and where you are motivated to maybe make change, right? If we're not motivated, then we can have ideas all day long. So really understanding your intrinsic why, like, why am I motivated to take action in my life? And in this case, one of the biggest reasons that sometimes we don't take action is because there is no clear plan. And so the 5P change model is going to take us through a plan for change. And in this plan for change, what we often don't really account for are the pivots, the roadblocks, the barriers, the things that are keeping us from doing the things that we want to do, that we know in our heart of hearts are going to keep us healthy, happy, and whole, for lack of a better way to talk about what is it that self-care really is. And we look at the 5P change model just to give you a visual. And this is how we're going to structure the presentation. And you'll see this integrated all the way through tonight's presentation. Is we're going to be encouraging these steps: the pause, processing, planning, pivoting, and proceeding. And how can we do all of this with greater intention? And so the change model is going to put structure to that. So the very first thing we're going to do right out of the gate is start practicing the 5Ps by focusing on the first one, called pause. So what does self-care mean to you? And that's a really important question. And you might want to write it down, because if we are not real clear on what it means, it's going to be very difficult to plan to do more of it. And I just, for frame of reference, took the time to just look up a couple of definitions on self-care. And the first one is the practice of taking action to preserve or improve one's own health, well-being, happiness, particularly in times of stress. And we know COVID has created stress. We know a diagnosis of breast cancer is certainly something that creates disruption in our lives. So stress can be a pretty big contributor to the importance of pausing to practice more of it, meaning self-care. So, my definition is a self focused attention to your own personal needs with the intention of feeling a sense of enjoyment and peace. And that's just my definition, but we all have our own, which is important, which is really important that you're clear on what does that mean to you. So, I'm going to ask everybody right out of the gate to close your eyes. And if you've done a presentation with me in the past, this is sort of my signature pause. So I would ask that you just get comfortable in your chair and you close your eyes and just literally begin to breathe, with a sense of greater awareness and intention. Something that we don't do much of. And pausing does not mean the suspension of action, but rather the intentional focus on this moment with the goal of examining tonight's self-care so that you can identify what you might want to change or adjust and to get a lot of clarity around the why, So as you're breathing, just keeping your eyes closed and breathing in and out, what does self-care mean to you? And just get a good visual. Maybe you have a definition that's in your mind and just get a good picture of that. And maybe even asking yourself, why did you choose to attend the presentation tonight? What was the catalyst that drove the decision to take very valuable time to focus on yourself and to learn more about self-care? What was your motivator? And as I'm posing these questions, I don't want you to lose focus on just breathing and noticing what's coming in and out of thought for you. And if you get distracted, just redirect your focus to your breathing, You might begin to feel sensation or a connection to your body that you haven't felt today. So it's sort of nice to pause and just get grounded. So the why question is so important. Why is self-care important to you? So as you're breathing, just pondering some of these really important questions. What will happen if I don't practice self-care? What will happen if I do? So beginning to envision the benefits of practicing or not practicing. And this invitation to be in your body is sometimes foreign if we've not practiced meditation or done this type of work that invites us to really pay attention to how we're feeling. But I would ask you, how would you feel? Envision how you would feel if you practiced more self-care. You might reflect on a time that you did something that really felt good and how you felt afterwards, and just remember that feeling. And just continue to breathe. Even if your mind is wandering, don't judge that. Just stay present with your breath and redirect back into your body, back into this place of great connection. So my last two questions, which I'm going to ask you to write down when we come back into the full view as a group together. And the last two questions are, do you want to practice more self-care? So that's a pretty important question to ask yourself. And if you're unsure, that's okay. That's awareness as well. And then the last question, I want you to take a big breath, breathe in and out. And this last question is so important. Process why practicing self-care to you is so important. Really get a lot of clarity around that. And just take about 3 more slow breaths in and out. We are looking to gain clarity and awareness. That becomes the first P in the 5P process. So opening your eyes. Take a deep breath. So it is in this place of self-reflection that you gain clarity, right? And awareness. And awareness is the first step towards intentional change. So you think about, where does the process of change begin? And it's very difficult to just make a decision to change without first pausing, because so many of our thoughts are unconscious. And by pausing and asking ourselves questions, making time and space to really do self-reflection allows sometimes things to be woken up that we weren't aware of. And in that greater clarity, it can actually drive us forward in a way that we are more intentional. So I am going to take us off of this share for a second. And I'm going to just ask you to write down your answers. So you are declaring, and you can change your answers. That's the good thing about life, right? The one good thing about it is change happens all the time. Nothing is forever. So if we are stuck in a place that we don't want to be, the good thought with that is that we won't be stuck there forever, right? So we have the ability to not only create change for ourselves, but also change sometimes happens to us, right? So it's interesting, this change dynamic. I would like for you to answer those 2 questions. Are you interested in practicing more self-care? Yes or no? And the why. Why is practicing self-care going to be so important? So if y'all all answered that question, it's going to come back up again. So I just want to make sure that you have that. And I think Ann Nelson just joined us. Hello, Miss Ann Nelson. I'm so glad you're on the call. I know you have yourself on mute, but welcome. And I will just say the only thing you missed was that we are going to be using a 5P model. And it's probably a good reminder for everybody else to move us through the presentation. What's that? I thought somebody asked me a question. So we'll be using the 5P model tonight to move through the entire presentation. And the 5P stands for pause, process, plan, pivot, and proceed. So now you are up speed. I'm going to move us back into share for another second. And let's see, share right where we stopped. So we are all very different and unique individuals, and we know that. You can look at your husband and your children and your friends and probably see many similarities. We do have some needs and desires and motivations that are similar, but we are different. And so most of our answers live inside of ourselves. So part of today's presentation is just to sort of wake up that level of awareness to identify your needs and get really clear on what's going to help you stay motivated, or what is going to be the catalyst for motivation. This slide, before we move into our breakout session, is going to help you process, because now we're moving into the process stage, which means to identify challenges, right? To ideate options, meaning come up with ideas for solutions, to assess your current state. And doing that is essential because it allows us to identify what is the catalyst. Why do I want to change? What is causing me not to practice self-care? How's that impacting my life? How is that influencing my health and happiness? So this is all the processing that we get to do so that it helps to support the plan that moves us into action. So I'm going to move us around this. And if you were in the last presentation, you've seen it, but I want to point out some key things for you to think about before we move into breakout. Where is your life out of balance? So if you look at, my life is out of balance in this area, and therefore I could probably practice more self-care in this area. So I'm going to point out a few. I want you to think on your own, though, without this roadmap that I'm going to give you, just the first things that come to mind. But I'll go through and just point out a few just to help you kind of think and ideate maybe outside of what you're currently thinking on your own. So I might say, my work. I am feeling like I don't have healthy boundaries and I'm working too much. I'm not exercising enough. I am feeling disconnected from my friends and family, and I'm not doing self-care things with people that I love. I am feeling depleted and out of balance. I'm not playing enough. I'm not being emotionally challenged enough. I am not spending time practicing self care habits. I am feeling a little stagnant. Maybe I need to consider doing things for my own personal growth. So when you think about taking inventory, it is this ability to do some self-reflection, and it does really help us identify. It really helps us identify what is out of balance and how could self-care perhaps help me bring myself into greater balance. So I'm going to move us to the next slide. And I'm going to take us out of this view back into the group view before I take us into small group. But these are the things that I want you to talk about in your small group. And we'll see how big we are when I come out. I want to take notice of how many people are on the call, because we might stay in a one big group. But these are the important questions for you to write down. Where's your life out of balance? And maybe think of one or two areas. Don't get overwhelmed and write, 19 things down, just one or two. And then how does that kind of correlate where with your self-care, right? And what do you do currently? I would want you to land in this place of abundance. What are you currently doing to practice self-care? Because I'm sure that we all are doing something. My hope is we might just want to be cultivating awareness around other things that we can do to add on and make sure we're practicing enough of it. And then what's one thing you want to start doing? Just one thing, because sometimes we want to start doing 9 things and then we can't do anything super well because we get overwhelmed and we're not focused. And so getting really clear about one thing you've been wanting to do, something that would be manageable, that would have a huge impact on your life. And maybe not even just yours, but the people who love you, the people around you. The intention now is to be in this larger group and to have both groups share. And I'll tell you the way this works. Is John Bennett, my professor, says keep it deep and brief. Only because we have a lot to cover, and we'll have, if we have time at the very end, we can certainly expand and kind of go deeper, but I want to make sure we get the framework so that you can follow it, and then we'll do some deeper diving. Make sense? So the first question is, where is your life out of balance? The second is, what do you do to practice self-care? So that's that list you were writing. And then what is one thing you want to start doing? So you're kind of declaring as a group and sort of your group list. So I know, Anne, you said you got bounced out, but do you want to attempt to summarize for your group and then maybe toss it to them and see if what you missed the last minute?
Okay, because I'm not sure I'll do the second question justice, but I think it was fabulous in that things that came up, for example, were working on eating healthier and taking advantage of Chef Laura's cooking classes through the Pink House, whether it be from a recorded at a time of your convenience or joining in that evening, is just a great way to get it going. And so one of our good friends in the group was sharing how she not only practiced that new recipe, but then was able to give a portion of it to a good friend who's going through a tough time right now. So so eating healthier to take care of ourselves, certainly working on feeling the need to get a rhythm going for exercise, like we know what we need to do, but that follow through is tricky. And so again, Laura came up because there's a number of pre-recorded sessions there online. And the fact that we can also be sure that we're doing it properly by watching her is helpful. In addition to that, just trying to come up with creative ways, whether it be walking. One of the ideas that came up, which I had never heard of, but I guess on QVC, there's something called CUBII. And that's where I lost Pam when she was talking about it, but it sounds like a type of exercise device that you can use. So indoors, rain or shine. And it sounds like she's using it more than my new rowing machine that I've done all about in the last month. I've fallen off that regimen. So Pam, I don't know if you want to share about that particular one.
Yeah, it's called a Kubi, and it's like you put your feet on it. It's small. You can put it under your desk, in front of your chair. You can do it while you're reading, while you're watching TV or whatever. And it has a little it records your number of strides. It helps your lower body. So it's like, if I don't get to walk that day, I do 20 minutes on the Kubi, and it'll tell me when I've done 20 minutes or whatever. And then it shows you how many calories you lost.
Nice.
Very cool. Very, very cool. So was there any real declaration? I heard in that exercise, eating healthier were two that people were interested in working on. Any more in your group, Anne?
And then another one that came up because not only through your class, Terry, but any of us that have taken the restorative yoga or other types of class where we focus on the breathing. Well,
Yes.
my monkey mind can take over when other things are on the calendar with pressing attention. And so we were talking about April's class on a couple times a month, again, on the Pink House YouTube site. And April is fantastic customizing. So I know I just started a few weeks ago, was nervous that I'm not going to be able to, balance on one foot with the arms and everything else, but she customizes for where you're at. And if you're having any struggle with any part of your body, that she can, include those options within the class where everybody benefits as well. And then another piece that came up was also, again, with COVID and having our lives disrupted in so many different levels, just trying to find things that bring us joy, kind of calm the mind down, focus on our faith, and just keeping that hope alive in any way that we can. I hope I did it justice, girls. I don't know if I forgot anything
You're getting a lot of thumbs up
in there.
I like it. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So we get to experience where we have similarities, where we have differences, where we're struggling, how we're coming up with creative ways to overcome. So this whole group discussion can be very powerful in a lot of ways. You learn about other resources from each other. So I appreciate you guys sharing. And the second group, who will report kind of the findings from the second group?
Well, I took notes, so maybe I should do it, does somebody else want to do it? Okay. So where is your life out of balance? There were 3 of us that said socially, especially during COVID. And also, now, Anne did such a nice job. Am I using names and just saying what so-and-so said? Is that okay to do?
You can just share in general. Yeah, certainly.
Okay. So one person was coming out of treatment and picking up the pieces and felt like a lot of things were off balance and wasn't quite sure how to rebuild. And COVID just made it harder. And another person had just moved and was in a temporary housing situation with her husband and waiting to move into another community. And so several areas also felt out of balance. And then all of us seem to share that about, just socially connecting with family and friends during this time of COVID. It looks different. It could be online, it could be in the Zoom, it could be even if you're in the same place with masks on. So it felt like we were out of balance in that way as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are some very valuable observations. Any Did your group sort of home in on just that self-care around personal awareness and recognizing imbalance and this desire to be with friends and family? Was that sort of a primary theme for your group?
I think so. We were enjoying talking, so we didn't get to the third question. The second question about practicing self-care. Several of us said that we liked watching comedy shows or movies or binge watching. One person liked guided mindful meditation and was practicing that for balance and self-care, and also walks or yeah. So
Yeah.
we wanted to laugh and watch shows and walk.
I love
and
it.
meditate.
I'm watching a show. Somebody said it about 4 months ago on a Zoom call, and I thought they said a curse word. And I was like, did she really say that word? There's a show called Schitt's Creek, and it is hysterical. If you want mindless TV and you want to laugh, I recommend it. And I went and Googled, I thought she did not just say a bad word, because she was the HR director of a company. And she said, I can't wait to watch Schitt's Creek. And I'm like, oh my God. But it is spelled with a $sign at the end, so it's all politically correct. But it's a really funny movie, and so there is a lot to be said for laughter. Laughter does create a hormonal release of serotonin and all kinds of things that really help us feel better. They're mood elevators. So when we laugh and we spend time in community talking with people, it automatically creates a lot of things that lift our spirits. So that's it. You spelled it right, Diane. That's excellent. Oh, funny. Okay, I'm going to shift us back into the share mode, but we'll come back out and do this again because this is a better view. I'll be right with you with our share, and I'll keep pushing us forward. All right, so we have talked about pausing, and I will say pausing in this pandemic has been particularly important for me because it has created disruption. It has created stress. It has created imbalance. And the beauty is you can hold two truths at one time. And that's part of having compassion for yourself, is to go, things are not optimal. This really is not making me happy. This is causing me tremendous stress. And I also know that I have a support system. I have people that I can reach out to. I feel confident that I can get through this because I've gotten through other things in my past. And so this ability to hold space and not to shove something down or act like it's not important and put on the armor and act like, you can do it all by yourself. That is not a very compassionate position to have with yourself. So the holding two truths gives space for both. And it takes us out of that absolute thinking, because sometimes when we get into that either or, it's like yes or no, right or wrong, it really can create more stress, right? So allowing yourself to pause and really breathe in and feel what you're feeling, and whatever emotions are coming up, don't judge those emotions, but rather lean in and have curiosity. Give yourself compassion, and then know that you're not alone. Know that it is okay to see something as a very challenging situation, but you're not stuck there, right? You can reach out, you can process new ways to overcome things. You can, moving us forward into the planning. What do I do in order to get myself out of this situation? It's going to require me to pivot. And good Lord, we've all done a lot of pivoting. So we know we can do it, right? So if we think about this change readiness, because there's a lot of things we probably all thought about in our lifetime that we wanted to do. And wanting to practice more self-care is not the first time you've had a goal, or probably the first time you've thought about, hey, I want to practice more self-care. But there is this intrinsic motivation that becomes very important, that is the accelerator pedal that helps to drive sustainable change. So if we're losing weight for somebody else, or we're trying to exercise because our friends said we should, those are external motivators. There are things that are coming from the outside. This intrinsic motivation is very personal. And when change is motivated by the desires of your heart, it does allow you to have more courage to actually take action. And when you realize something deeper, like the quality of your life depends on it. And I've had so many people tell me that part of the reason they wanted to stay in shape is they wanted to be able to roll around on the floor with their grandkids. That is a deep intrinsic motivation, right? So attaching your desire to something much more powerful than an external driver. So hopefully that makes sense. So intrinsic motivation, is your motivation enough? And I would say if it's intrinsic in nature, then I would say it is good enough. And I would ask you to just look back on the question I asked you at the very beginning and think about, do you want to practice more self-care? You answered that question. Why is it important to you? So that why helps drive us towards the intrinsic desire of our hearts. And in that desire, that can fuel motivation in a much more powerful, sustainable way. So a couple of things. It helps us to clarify how we want to move into action too. But I want to talk about something for a brief second called self-efficacy. And this will help us move into the planning stage. And this word self-care, self-efficacy, it means I have the desire. I am willing to put together a plan. I have the support and I have the tools to execute that plan. And I believe I can achieve my desired outcome. All of those things are important to help drive sustainable change, to help you truly begin to integrate new behavior, new self-care habits into your life, is your ability to visualize that. Can you see yourself literally doing more self-care, and not just seeing yourself doing it, but can you feel the benefits? Can you truly look at how your life will be in a positive way changed as a result of taking action? And I talk about the mind a lot in my presentations because everything starts with our thoughts. So if our mindset is not cooperating, right, supporting us, our own internal thoughts, our own internal dialogue, these voices that are our own in our own heads aren't supporting that change, then it's going to be very difficult to change. So this ability to pause and notice, what am I saying to myself? Am I encouraging myself? Am I supporting these desired actions? Am I reaching out for help if I need it? So this ability to shift your focus, shift your mindset in a very positive direction, and allow yourself to spend time visualizing your ability to find the time, to make the time, to get what you need aligned so that you can truly move forward with a plan, a strategy. So I think that this mindset piece and your ability to visualize is very important in this part of the process, because you have to have a clear vision in order to architect a clear plan. So 2 more slides and then I'm going to pull us out, because I am building on this next breakout session, which is going to be talking about the plan, right? So we know that time and energy are finite. We cannot buy more of it. The only way we can adjust time is to adjust what we're doing with our time. And the way we can do that is we can take inventory. What am I doing in a given day? How am I spending my time and energy? Who am I spending it with? Those are all very powerful questions. And then where can you flex? Where can you adjust? Where can you make pivots that are going to allow you to make the time that you need, in this case, to practice more self-care? We know that doing things alone is fine, but it's a lot more fun when we are working with like-minded people, which is why the sessions and these breakout opportunities are a lot of fun, because we can support and learn from each other. And I'm going to caution you, because this is always what is in the middle of the road. And that barrier is whatever you allow it to be. Whatever you allow it to be. So in order to plan, we have to plan for barriers, right? We have to plan for them because they exist. Life is not without things getting in the way of our plans, right? So we need to get clear on how does my plan allot for these barriers, because this may, again, not be your first rodeo. You maybe wanted to practice many of the things that we're talking about more, but that barrier, whatever it is for you, just keeps throwing itself out into the middle of the road. And so we need to figure out how the heck to get around it. And this little bad boy shows up also. We are going along our little plan and it's all fabulous. And then, we stop doing it. And so it's not so much focusing on the relapse, but it's focusing on the strategy to rebound, right? And this requires grace, awareness, pivoting, adjusting your mindset, reaching out for help. And I love visuals because when we're on the side of a cliff and we're struggling, there is no need to stay there dangling by a thin thread when you can just reach out and ask for support, right? So when we move into this next breakout session, I want those visuals to go with you. Time and energy. What is the support I need? What are the barriers that are getting in the way of me doing this beautiful self-care thing that I know is so important? And when I relapse, how can I give myself kindness? What is my plan of strategy? So I'm going to pause this for a second. This next breakout session is for you to declare what you want to start doing. Like, declare it, because when we declare it, that helps to move and motivate us. We begin to see it in our minds, we begin to speak it through words, and then that makes it much easier to take into action. I want to encourage you to talk about the barriers because this is where we always run out of time. And this is always the thing that keeps us. We can ideate all the fabulous self-care things we want to do all day long, but we hit these barriers and we never spend time looking at them. And this is where we need to focus. What is getting in the way of me practicing the most important thing on the planet? And that is self-care. If I don't put the oxygen mask on me, how in the world can I serve my children, my family, right? How can I be of service if I am depleted? So this last question, discuss how you are going to overcome those barriers. I really want you to challenge each other. I want you to use each other. And if time is an issue, if that's a big one, usually energy is an issue, talk about those things and don't get stuck there. Think about how you can ideate, meaning coming up with ideas. How can you make the time? How can you create the space? How can you stay committed? Who can help you? What are the barriers? How can you get rid of those barriers? I really want you to land heavy in this lane of how can we help each other get around the boulder? Because you can't. You just have to spend time deciding you want to and planning action to allow you to execute that and believing that you can. Make sense? We have processed, well, we've paused and we've processed together, and we are in the planning stages, right? And we're making time to go through that process in order to move further forward with greater intention. And this is kind of where the rubber meets the road. It's the pivot, right? It's the, am I really going to do this? Staking claim, and then taking this plan and putting it into action. So I'd love to hear what the two groups kind of just declared and what barriers and how you blew those big boulders up together as a group.
Do you care which group goes first, Terrie, or
Don't, is whoever wants to go.
Lisa? Did you want to? Lisa, did you want to go the first this time? Lisa, was she
left.
secretary last time?
I think she was
Yes,
off the group though. So I think it would be Charmaine.
yeah, I took notes.
Do you want to go
Okay.
first, Mary Ida, or would you like me to?
I'll be happy to go first. That's all right.
Oh,
Lisa,
thanks.
Shar and I had a really nice one-on-one chat, but we missed missed Lisa and we missed her input and her note taking. But we found that all three of these categories really overlapped a lot, because the things that are out of balance are also the things we want to practice and do more of, to correct them, and that's the that's how to overcome the barriers. And so um, the things that are barriers are anxiety and health issues, really, and dealing with what we have to do to correct the health issues, as well as the things that we have choices about. And with some of the things that we agree on wanting to start doing include exercising more. And I personally am big time into mindfulness meditation. And I say this because there's another wonderful cancer support community in Ann Arbor, Michigan that I belong to. And we do mindfulness meditation for an hour twice a week with guided professionals as guides. And we want to exercise more, eat healthy, and learn to put ourselves first. And that's it. Actually, I added, I want to do some writing, but that seems to come last. So
Writing is very cathartic, right? Very
Yes.
cathartic, and is a great way to do self-reflection. It's taking those thoughts and moving it into writing, and then the ability to be a witness of your own thoughts and your own writing, kind of as a third party rather than in the middle of all of it. So journaling and those writing exercises can be really valuable. I love that, Marion. I remember last time you shared a little bit about your mindfulness and the anxiety and health issues, those kind of create, they're hand in hand, right? The anxiety and the health issues, they kind of feed each other. And if you don't break that cycle, shifting the mindset, you can stay stuck, like circling the runway in that rumination. And so the ability to redirect your thoughts in a more positive, powerful outcome by pausing and checking in and connecting to how you're feeling and really having compassion. I mean, really practicing compassion is a very powerful way to shift the mindset at its core. So thank you for sharing that. And then I'll get the other group to maybe share a little bit, and then I will close us up. And I do have a few things I'll be sending you guys that will support your learning and help you maybe move this action even deeper into deployment, if you will. So Anne, are you sharing for your group?
Thank you. And there may be some overlaps with you, Mary Ida. So thank you for what you were sharing earlier. One of our friends in the group brought up a really good point. As women, we tend to be nurturers and oftentimes put ourselves on that back burner and not be that priority, CSR. And so that in turn can also become very overwhelming, because then projects or chores or things that need to be, laundry, whatever it is, would be, should be, could be, get shoved on that back burner. But one of the things, and thanks to you, Terrie, and also thanks to the programming at the Pink House, is it keeps reminding us that we need to take care of ourselves and be that number one priority. And so, of course, with having to socially distance and isolate, that's been a challenge. So a couple of the things that were barriers were, for example, just getting up off at that couch when you're comfy and know that you know what you could do and should do, but you got to do it. That follow through, trying to get outside and do more walks. And hopefully that will be easier now with the beautiful weather and trees in bloom and birds singing and everything else. this other suggestion that came up was fantastic. One of our friends got a diary as a gift, and it's a 5-year diary. And instead of writing down all those things that you need to do, should do, would do, writing down 3 things that you've accomplished that day that just bring you joy, make you feel good. And so in a way, it's kind of a gratitude journal too, which is pretty terrific. And I'm trying to think. I can't say we necessarily broke down each question. It just seemed like we all kind of targeted in on the barrier side of it, and trying to come up with ways of how can we get around it. Can't go through it, got to go around it. So anyway, thank you for, offering this group session, because it's just such a good feeling to know that we all can be each other's cheerleader and, continue to be the best that we can be.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the pivots, I mean, that we have to do happen often and always. And this whole plan, pause, process, plan, pivot, and proceed. It's not linear, right? Because sometimes we'll pause and we'll have we'll process something and we're really clear on why we want to do it. And we'll start the plan, and then there's the boulder. And then we have to pivot, right? And we have to go to plan B. And the ability to ideate solutions is so incredibly powerful. And to be able to do that in group can be very powerful as well, because you hear how other people are coming up with solutions. And one of Carol Dweck is a writer and a researcher, and she's done something called growth mindset. And it is research in and around coming up with multiple pathways to the same goal, and your ability to cultivate different ways to get to the same place, being almost prepared to know that that one plan may not work. And so how can you go on and create alternate plans? And that gives you a greater sense of self-efficacy, because you're not hanging on to that one thing working in order to bring you satisfaction. You've already created a broader perspective on solving a problem. And a lot of that is hard to do sometimes by yourself. So being in community or with an accountability partner, you can kind of talk through how are the different ways we can get there? What are the barriers? How are the different ways we can overcome those? So ideating different ways to come around that barrier, right? Not just one, not just through it and blow it up. I mean, what are all of them? So those are really very, very powerful things when you think about the cycle and knowing that change is inevitable. And it's how we respond to change that we have some control over. And when we can ideate and take action proactively, like when we're doing tonight, we've paused, we decided that this was an important topic to discuss. We're collaborating together, we're processing how we're feeling, we're coming up with ideas. I mean, it takes time and energy and commitment. And then what are the things that you can do to set yourself up for success? And that is being in community, having an accountability partner, having a very clear plan. And I'm going to send you some things that I think you might find helpful as sort of post, because this could be a full weekend workshop. I mean, truly, I'm pushing you guys through it pretty quickly, but I just want you to get a sense of the components so that it begins to wake up some things in your mind that may give you structure when you find yourself stuck, right? So I'm going to send you something called SMART goals, which is a really cool way to plan for change. And the SMART goals are basically making your goals specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. And it's sort of an old school model, but it works really well, because sometimes we'll say, I'm going to stop smoking. And that's just sort of a nebulous, I'm going to stop smoking. That's not a plan. And so SMART goals helps you to put framework around the plan. And so I'm going to send you that. And I'm going to send you also an action plan checklist. And it is to develop, declare, and reward. And it's an important part of this change process. And when you get it, it'll be I just want to tell you about it. So it'll be a reminder is that, self-care is a personal commitment, that staying really connected to your intrinsic why and just really dropping down. When you lose sight, go back in and tap into that, making that plan and committing to it, writing it down. And you can use the SMART goals to do that. And then keeping track. It takes 90 days for a new habit to stick. terms of just the way our brain is wired. You'll hear a lot of people say 30 days and research does not support that. It takes a little bit longer to rewire patterns of behavior. And you tend to be far more successful when you're not doing it by yourself. So the accountability partner is important there. And I want to land on this place of relapse because we run out of like energy sometimes, right? And when we run out of energy, we can lose hope. We can lose hope. And when we lose hope, that doesn't fuel change, right? That puts us in a stuck pattern of thinking that often appears or feels like there's no way out. And if you find, and when you find yourself in that place in your life, have compassion. Compassion first. Judgment does nothing but drive you deeper, right? It just drives you deeper into the hole. And I love what you said, Anne, about the gratitude journal. Holding two truths. It is a crappy situation, and I have great gratitude. I have a support group. Leaning into abundance and writing down what you're grateful for despite life's challenges anchors us into this place called appreciative inquiry. And that is where hope gets rebuilt. It gets rebuilt in that place. So just, I feel like, especially talking to women, it's just so important that I remind us all that we can find ourselves feeling hopeless, but we're not. We have what we need. We just have to have compassion first. Compassion first. Make sense? So easy to move to judgment. It's so easy. And maybe replace that word judgment with curiosity. Curiosity, kind curiosity, right? Why am I feeling this way? What can I do to shift? Maybe I can write down my things that I'm grateful for. Maybe I can call a friend, but I don't have to stay stuck here. I don't have to stay stuck. So we are 7 minutes over, which is so typical of like these kind of conversations because they're just so rich. But I will definitely send a few follow-up items your way. And I just want to open the group up or open the floor up if anybody has anything you'd like to share. I'm not rushing. I just want to be sensitive to your time. But if you have anything you want to share or any final remarks, I want to open it up to you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Incredible.
Thank you. I would like to share that one of the things that I think is interesting is when we get to share like this in the small groups, and I found it uplifting to find that other people are in the same situation I am. And especially, I don't know Diane yet in the small group, but I will get to know her because now we're going to communicate about these exercise videos. And but Anne and Pam are two people from the Pink House that I've really admired, and to find they're having the same struggles I am, and that they're working through them, so I can do it too. Kind of. I find that motivating.
We can do it together.
Yes, that's yeah. That's. I thought that's motivating.
Yes. Thank you.
That's interesting, Adrienne. And that is definitely a phenomenon that happens when we get together in community. And it's very powerful. And I'm glad that you had that experience. The next session we're doing next month is about resiliency. And it's about how we don't need to put our armor on and how we do need to lean into community and what are the things that we can do that help us to remain optimistic, that help us to have hope, to help us feel like we can rebound and have resiliency even when we feel, a little bit heavy. And there's some real tangible, specific things that we can look at in our own lives that maybe we're unaware, and through, again, pausing and creating awareness, we can process new ways of thinking and maybe plan around creating more resiliency in our own lives. And who gives us these tools, y'all? Who talks to us? I didn't learn it in high school or college. My parents, they don't pause. And so, I'm like, where do you learn it? So this work that we're doing is just so powerful, no matter what age we are. It's just such a gift to give to ourselves. And And we can be, as women and leaders in our community, we can set the example, not by telling people what to do, but acting.